Now we have nearly reached the moment of a short break, coffee break, etc. But dear participants, as you were posting quite some interesting remarks and suggestions and questions, I invite now our Deputy Coordinator Saskia Visser again to have a resuming first debate or second debate already with the former speakers, Luca Montanarella, Diego Intriolio, and Catharina Helming again, and Bram Moeskops. So stay there. Are you there already, Saskia? Are you ready? And did you read all the questions coming in?
Yes, I did read all the questions coming in, and I'm also ready for this part of the discussion. So my first question would be just to have a brief thought about a question to Catharina. So you have summarized all the research needs from a different perspective. Then if you also have followed the presentation that Luca had made about the expectations of EU policy as the way he presented it. So where do you think are the opportunities, and what are the scientific questions that should be addressed in relation to this expectation?
Yes, thank you. I think it's mainly three things that are opportunities and challenges at the same side. The first is the integration of the agricultural sciences with the soil sciences to come to a really systemic approach. Looking into the management, rotations, tillage, also the whole landscape and field arrangement, which is extremely important, not only to combat erosion, but also to develop the microclimate and also allow antagonists of pests to develop. And of course, the whole issue of digitalization, which I think is a real good opportunity, but only when it is implemented towards the advantage of the soil and not only towards economic advantage. And I think this is one of the greatest challenges for science, to steer research on digitalization into the direction of sustainability and soils. Key issue also, for instance, how biota can affect nutrient soil turnover and soil structure. So the interaction between the biological system and the physical and hydrological system within the soil, which is not well understood, but everyone knows, like almost a gut feeling, that this is key also for linking adaptation with mitigation. This is very important. This is my first point. Second point is the long-term thing. Sustainable soil management, soil health is something that is taking time. And it is a long-term endeavor. And here also for policy, I think it's extremely important. We cannot implement instruments that work over 1 year or two in order to improve soils. We need measures that are acting at long term, and we need to understand how in 10 years the whole frame conditions for soil management are. And third point is the value chain again, transformation. I think this is also mentioned already earlier very often. We have to understand that we cannot do it alone. So we have also from scientific perspective link up with the other sciences in order to allow for this transformation, to include the consumer in doing soil supporting consumption, if you want so, and link up with the socioeconomic sciences also to develop the right signals and solutions for sustainable soil management.
Okay, well, I really like the idea soil supporting consumption. It sounds nice as well. So, Luca, if I may ask you, can you react to or reflect to what Catharina just had said, and at the same time think about, and that's a question coming in from Maria van Trappie, to ask if it's possible to have a collaboration between the EGP Soil Initiative and the EIP Agri in order to promote the application of sustainable soil management among farmers and organize participatory soil research.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Saskia. Yeah, and thank you, Catharina. I was watching her background while she was talking. about having transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary approaches. She has a background which shows exactly the problem. Because you see, for example, we still didn't manage to break the silos between the academic world dealing with agriculture and the academic world dealing with forests. I give you this example. Mm-hmm. The background of Katharina shows a beautiful landscape with, in the very end, there is a big forest, and in the foreground you see pastures and green grass. And that's considered somehow by many as completely separate worlds. You know that there is a completely different community dealing with forest soil, for example. And this community and the agricultural community and the grassland community, I'm still experiencing very often very little communication. I think we made attempts, but it's still, we are far away from that. And I give you the example of soil monitoring. The very first comprehensive soil monitoring in Europe was done by the forest soil community with the ICP Forest Initiative, where on a regular 16 by 16 kilometer grid, we were taking soil samples regularly and looking to soil properties, but only in forest. And the big question came, what do you do when the forest is not there anymore, when you go back after 10 years? And the answer from the forest community was, well, we will not take a sample. And of course, this is exactly where there is the missing link. We want to have, I think, a more holistic view of the landscape, as Katharina was already saying, and having a comprehensive understanding of soil. So you cannot deal with soils in isolation because land use change, land cover change is happening now quite intensively in the EU. And if you don't understand that nexus, I don't think we will go very far. The other thing which was very interesting is that Katharina was mentioning the link between consumer and sustainable soil management. And here again came immediately to my mind that we just released, and Marta was mentioning it, our organic farming action plan and our view for organic agriculture in the EU. And we are a little bit in the forefront, I would say, worldwide on organic farming. And I'm always really surprised that very rarely there is a clear statement saying organic farming means sustainable soil management. And if this is true, and personally I think it is true, then the consumers can already choose, can already do what Katharina was advocating. So again, there are many things that I think need to be said more explicitly and need to be addressed if we want to make progress and go out of the business as usual approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. An additional question, maybe a little bit related to one specific question from Virginius Visser. He says, okay, what is the perspective of, for instance, no-till practical application if glyphosate usage would be abandoned? I think this is a very practical example, but there are some overarching scientific knowledge development news in relation to the implementation of the farm to fork strategy. How do we reach 25% of our organic agriculture? How do we reach a significant reduction in fertilizer use? Do you have specific scientific questions that we should address within EGP soil to help support those items?
Should I answer?
Yeah, Luca, and then maybe also
the issue of glyphosate and conservation agriculture, so-called conservation agriculture, or reduced tillage or no tillage. It's something that I'm talking about since years. One of the things that always surprised me that many of the people who advocate conservation agriculture or zero tillage or reduced tillage never mention the fact that if you do that, you will need to use an increased amount of herbicides, particularly of total herbicides, because simply you have an issue with weeds. Always is put in the forefront, of course, the benefit of zero tillage, which is, of course, not disrupting not putting strong oxygenation to the soil, so limiting the mineralization of organic matter, of course, reduces CO2 emissions, of course, increases organic carbon content, but you should see the trade-offs. So, and that's, again, honest science should put forward the real complete picture, not just a partial view on this. And again, a big task for AGP Soil is to do this, to bring forward science that is really addressing issues in a holistic way, look into all aspects. There are also social aspects, there are also economic aspects, of course, to everything. And so if you could succeed in that, it would be a great step forward, because still I see a lot of people advocating conservation agriculture and zero no tillage, not mentioning also the trade-offs, which are, for example, glyphosate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think honest science, indeed, introducing all aspects is very important. Related to a solution could be a further development, for instance, in the robotics, to see how we can deal with herbicides, with how we can do with, well, reduced tillage and making, well, not having to make use of all these pesticides or herbicides in that. I would like to move to this another type of question, and I would like to ask Bram. You have followed the debate between the program owners. So how do you reflect on the national ambitions and the expectations of EGP Soil to really foster the uptake of the outcomes of EGP Soil? What are your reactions to what has been said in that part of the discussions?
Well, I'm sorry, but I did not follow that discussion, so I just joined when we started the debate on that. So I can take another question, but this question would be difficult for me to answer. Okay.
Then I would ask Diego. No, let me see. Okay, Bram, you just mentioned that there's a large diversity of farms to be considered, and then we should take on the to include this the diversity of farms, and we have to think about how we can deal with it, with all this diversity. Diego, to you, in your experience, how do program owners, or how does the EU deal with this diversity? Is it stimulated? Can we work with it in a country into policy advice?
Sure. Of course, the diversity of situation is huge within Europe because of the very different climatic conditions. Indeed, we have, with a broad range from Northern Europe to South of Europe, a very big gradient in rainfall regime, for instance, that are making a huge impact in terms of our ecosystem function. So this has to be, of course, considered, but still the principles, the governing rules are basically the physical and biophysical are the same. So it's important that we collaboratively work in order to provide some scientific questions to some of the challenges that and answers we need. So like, for instance, the one that was raised in the chat, what about when no tillage, what do we do with the weeds? So all these type of things can be very much appraised collaboratively by doing experiment, for instance, under different environmental conditions, in order to obtain general conclusions that then we can be translated into local policies or local instruments that actually can be supported, for instance, by a general umbrella, that it is the common agricultural policies that can be adapted then at the local and national and even regional level, because then even within countries, there might be very different regional aspects to consider. That's the way to go. So we expect from the AGP Soil to provide some answers to some questions, practical questions that are raised that can be converted into policies from the national within the common agricultural policy umbrella that we all share.
Okay, thank you. Bram, how would you react on what Diego just said, and at the same time include in your response the need for, well, this whole diverse range of farmers, but for the long-term goals from a policy perspective?
Well, yeah, I agree that we need solutions for all kinds of farming systems, organic, conventional, but also considering the wide diversity of climates in Europe. So I see in the chat, for example, now soil cover is one main thing to improve soils, and can also say solve the opposition between conservation tillage and not using chemicals. But then this can, depending on the climate system, this can be implemented in different ways. So working with a living soil mulch that can be destroyed then when the main crop is grown. It can work very well in dry climates when the mulch can be easily destroyed and the main crop can grow. In more colder and humid climates, it is more difficult. So we need really solutions for that can work in different climates. So that's very important.
Okay, thank you. Then I would like to go to Diego again. Diego, you have seen the presentation by Katerina on how science can, well, evolve into policy advice. What are the main lessons that you get from this part of the presentation?
Well, the presentation was actually very nice, and one important thing that Katerina highlighted that we fully agree is the needed link between soil function, soil health, indeed, soil characteristics, and the food production, not only in terms of quantity, but also of quality. This is crucial, particularly when we are talking about agricultural soil system, is to have this link. And I believe in this sense, there is still some research needed to understand what are the possible effects of soil health on food quality. For instance, just to give up a specific example, antibiotics or other contaminants are those, for instance, translocated within the plant, are uptaken by what we at the end eat, how this is done. All this research is needed. And then at the end, it is very important because then we have the opportunity to link the soil management to the consumers, as Katerina was saying, and I really like that point, because at the end, then can also support the implementation of some management practices, because if we are able to show consumers that we do some given soil management that is, at the end, will result in a healthier food, then we have an opportunity also to economically, for instance, support all the implementation of these practices. So this link is very much needed in order to, at the end, to boost the application of the soil management practices by the end users, so in this case, by the farmers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then, Katerina, what do you think? How would you react on what Diego just said?
Yes, I would fully agree, but I would like to point on another point. And I think it's, of course, about quality. That is very important, but it's also about quantity. And when we think about the planetary boundaries, I think it is obvious that also with the best management practices, we cannot improve the soils and support all the soil functions while at the same time produce so much food and bioenergy that we can continue with the diet we have at the moment. So we have to reduce the production. And of course, the key turning point is the meat consumption here. This is one point. And I would like to come back to the research questions, if I may, and also point on adaptation and on soil structure. I think we do not talk enough about the hydrological part, about water storage. And I think for the farmers in the long term, at least in the drier countries, in the east and in the south, the water storage capacity of the soil is a key point to survive the many days of drought. And here, the relationship between the biotic components and the biotic processes and the soil structure And at the end, the water holding capacity is a key point which we may not have analyzed enough and understood enough. Also, how that interrelates with the management, with the crop rotations and the tillage. And yes, I do not want to leave this discussion without having said that.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a very important, and I think it was also mentioned once in the chat. Luca, may I ask you, is water management an important integral part of the soil mission?
Yes, and I want to add, Saskia, you hear me? This must be the last question. I'm also the timekeeper, so I'm very sorry. A short answer, maybe, Luca?
Well, certainly, I mean, water holding capacity of soil is crucial if we want to consider soils into all the issues related to drought management, and particularly in all the issues related to the fact that the EU is affected by desertification. I mean, we should not forget we have ratified the Convention to combat desertification, and several of our EU member states are considered affected countries by desertification. So the water holding capacity of soils is crucial to manage droughts and to manage extreme situations that Katarina was already mentioning, mostly in the Mediterranean area, but also in some Central and Eastern European countries. So this is a well-known nexus between water and soils. I mean, I think it's crucial.
Thank you, thank you. So I would like to, with this, thank you all for participating in this panel discussion. I think we have managed to answer some of the questions in the chat, not all of them. If I would summarize what has been said, I would say we are in need of a deeper understanding of a range of processes related to soil. Therefore, we need to collaborate beyond our own soil sciences, and even within the soil science community we need to work on, and we need to apply a systemic approach to our view of how the world looks like, and to include that into our soil management research.
Yes.
I think there will be a room for a whole range of different agricultural systems, but in our science, in the way we find solutions, we have to be honest. We have to show the positive impact, but also really clearly state what are the negative trade-offs in relation to that, such that people could choose which type of farming systems to be used.
Okay.
Well, we need to address water management and adaptation as an equal important and crucial element related to climate mitigation. And with that message, I would like to end this debate. Thank you all very much, and Greet, the word is up to you.
Thank you very much, Saskia Visser, for this wrap-up. Indeed, I had the impression that we could elaborate on more issues. Unfortunately, or luckily, we have a break now. Welcome back at part 2 of our annual Science Days EGP Soil program, first edition 2021, under severe corona conditions, as you see. Are there already tangible results from the consortium? There were a lot of deadlines. I heard it from Claire Chenu this morning. There was a lot of work realized in the work packages. In call 1, we have 10 research projects that started up. Yes, we have some specific scientific news to tell already in this first edition of the annual Science Days. I give the floor to Saskia Visser. She's the leader of Work Package 2, which was designing a roadmap for research and capacity building priorities and organizing national stock takes. We all know both would have facilitated a nice feedback loop, Saskia, with the research calls, but then there was Corona and there were some reschedulizations, etc. You will tell all about it. Anyway, I would like to hear from you, Saskia, to what extent the roadmap shows the way for policymaking in the member states and in Europe. And what about harmonization of soil data? And what about differences in speed and in regional challenges? I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Greet. And thank you for giving me the opportunity here to show what we have been what we have done until now. I will share my screen to start the presentation. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
There it is. Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you. So the name of my presentation is the Road to the Roadmap of EGP Soil. I present this on behalf of all of Work Package 2, the whole task for all the people behind it. My name is Saskia Visser. As I said, I work at Wageningen Environmental Research, and well, I hope to share some of my thoughts on this. The content of the talk is first, I will go into the role of the roadmap within EGP Soil, then the methodology, how we came to EU-wide these EU-wide research needs that are the end result of the roadmap, the theoretical framework that we used, how we did the knowledge inventory across Europe, and then some highlights of the reports that we've made. And finally, the build-up and the logic of the roadmap document and the derived activities from that. So the role of the roadmap in EGP Soil is that we have made a targeted vision for climate smart agricultural soil management for these different target areas: climate change mitigation, adaptation, sustainable agricultural production, and sustainable environment, with which we mean healthy soils and healthy landscapes. We need this targeted vision to create an implementation plan in which we want to engage and commit the member states and the stakeholders across Europe in joining forces to collaborate together on research and complementary activities. Then at the end of the whole EGP Soil, we'll make a new document that will be a strategic research agenda for the next 10 years in Europe. The methodology to how we came to this desired outputs. So this is a graphical representation of what we have done, and this is what I will walk you through in this presentation. So first we did an EU-wide consultation on these knowledge needs. We have constructed these national hubs that were already explained before. We did a series of stock takes, literature review, and communications with the Joint Research Center. And from this, we made these reports that were introduced to you, some highlights from later on, and input from the different other different work packages. And finally, to come to these research needs and proposed topics that led to a set of work package tasks and the research goals that will be, have been, and are going to be put in work package 3 and 4 internal and external calls. So the national hubs, as was explained before already, we asked each partner to do a thorough stakeholder inventory in their country and construct a group of stakeholders that would represent them into a national hub, which was done in most countries. They comprise of stakeholder groups of academics, policymakers, NGOs, and farmer organizations. And the way this national hub is used or is going to be used is in twofold. One is from them to us, and the other way is from us back to them. So to consult what are their knowledge needs and aspiration and barriers that they face, and how we can bring back the information that we gather and make within EJP soil. Then a little bit about the research vision and theory that we've used to build our vision and roadmap. So the first one is this knowledge framework. We want to stress that EJP soil is not only about knowledge development, but also about knowledge sharing and transfer, about harmonizing and storage of data, the soil data, and how we can apply the knowledge that we have and are going to develop within EJP soil in practice. So the next one is a little bit complicated diagram, but I still want to show it because it was the basis of many of the assessments and questions that we asked through the national hubs within this EU-wide inventory. So basically, you see the management and the soils, and we would like to make plans and solutions that bring an optimized relationship between the two to enable the development or the reaching of the achieving of the EJP soils goals that you see here on the right-hand side. And lastly, the regional diversity. So we originally started with the idea to use the environmental zone map that you see on the left-hand side. But because of some constraints that we had in the inventory, we used mainly the map on the right-hand side, which is a grouping of different countries into Central, Western, Northern, and Southern Europe. And finally, we have made a glossary that you can find on the EJP website that gives us a common language to understand each other better. So first of all, I will go into the methodology of the first part, so the EU-wide consultation. So the inventory was made in a three-step approach. So first we asked the people in all member states on their aspirational targets. What kind of aspirations do they have in terms of soil services on regional, national, and European level? Then the second step was to see what kind of knowledge do we already have and how are we using it at the moment and which kind of gaps do we have at the moment. And the third step is which type of barriers and opportunities do we have to reach these aspirational targets. So basically, why are we not there where we would like to be, and what are the opportunities to get there? And in addition to that, we did 5 stock takes that I will explain later in more detail. Then, of course, we had, as everybody knows, and also this is why we are now in this webinar and not very nicely on a nice location within Europe together, is that we had COVID-19. So we planned originally to have workshops to do this 3-step approach in each country with the national hubs, but this was not feasible, and we were in a hurry and couldn't wait. So therefore, we replaced the workshops by questionnaires and key interviews or interviews with key stakeholders in all countries. So now I would like to give you a couple of highlights from each of the reports that were made within work package 2. So the aspirational targets, the knowledge availability and use, the barriers and opportunities, and the 5 stock takes. So the first one is the aspirational targets. They did this in a 2-step approach. They first did a policy analysis, and the main general conclusion was that there is still a shared need at all levels for appropriate policy targets, indicators, and monitoring systems. And this is because policies are still often vague and that there is a lack of clear quantified soil targets with a good time horizon, with good indicators and monitoring tools. In addition, they also found that when they looked at which topics, which soil challenges are mentioned most in the policy documents, you see that by far the soil organic carbon is mentioned the most, but also erosion, contamination, and nutrients. And nutrient availability is mentioned in policy documents a lot. So the second step was the stakeholder views. And they did a very nice inventory to see how each policy is seen to be future-proof and how much this policy is actually bringing what they are supposed to be doing. So how are they bridging the gap to the realization of the policy itself? And they say that it's for all soil challenges, there's still a long way to go to be put future-proof and to actually reach what they intend to do. So then finally, together with these two things were combined, the policy analysis and the stakeholder view, and they recommend to put more focus on multi-stakeholder participation in a holistic perspective, to have more appropriate policy targets, indicators, and monitoring systems, to develop marker-driven economic incentives, knowledge, to do more knowledge and knowledge sharing, and to develop innovative and data-driven soil management. The next report was on the state of knowledge of agricultural soils. This report falls apart into three parts, one focusing on the state-of-the-art of knowledge of soil research regarding carbon stocks, one on soil degradation and fertility, and one on the strategies for improved soil management. This was done a little bit different than all the other ones, because all the other ones were done with these interviews and stakeholder interacting with the National Hub. In this case, they did interviews with soil experts and reviewed a lot of documents from EU projects and peer review literature. So they made an inventory of the knowledge gaps identified in the different countries. Then they also made, they looked at which knowledge gaps are important for different regions, but in some of them they were important for all regions and specifically oriented towards how to get more carbon into the soil and how long it can stay there, and other ones about harmonization of monitoring, modeling, and assessment of soil carbon. They did a similar evaluation also for soil degradation and fertility and strategies for improved soil management. But with respect to time, I will not show this. But what they did make also, they also looked at which type of knowledge gaps are actually important for all of these three issues, or soil carbon stocks, strategies for improved soil management, and soil degradation and fertility. And then they found that especially models, peatlands, compaction, and soil monitoring are issues that are in the core of all of these three issues. The next report was on knowledge use. And this diagram that you see here is very complex, but it basically shows here on the top the different knowledge, how the knowledge on these different issues that are stated in the top, so the soil organic carbon, peat degradation, etc. How this knowledge is used in the different countries across Europe, and then you see the different regions. What you just need to see is that the red bars are the ones that are seen as very important soil challenges and are seen as very important research need topics. And then you can see that by far the soil organic carbon is seen as the most important research need, but also soil biodiversity and water storage capacity is ranked high. Then more overarching, they show that the there are shortcomings in the knowledge use in terms of knowledge production, that it's too theoretic and difficult to use by end users. There is little continuity in current soil research, and there's a need for integrated support. And they recommend to improve the coordination between policy, research, industry, and advisory services, strengthening networks and peer-to-peer communication, and provide incentives and improve visibility of soil challenges for stakeholders. Then the next step in our inventory was to assess the barriers and opportunities. So the objective of this report was to define the soil challenges priorities and to define the knowledge barriers and opportunities to overcome the soil challenges and contribute to the EJP soil targets. They also found that the first 5 soil challenges across Europe, when they were ranked, were soil organic matter and peat soil, water storage capacity and regulation, soil sealing, nutrient retention, and erosion. Then they made these really nice diagrams, which have in the middle, you can see the development, sharing, and knowledge. You can see the different compartments of our knowledge framework. And some of the things that they found are things that you probably could have imagined yourself, but I just want to highlight a couple of things that I found interesting to see as in terms of barriers. So in the knowledge, oh my God, in the knowledge development part, there they highlighted the non-exist or the little existence of public-private partnerships. They think there's a barrier towards actors' communication and a barrier for application in terms of that the yields and the profits are too low for farmers. And that there's a lack of common data policy. When it comes to opportunities, they did the same. So we again see in the middle ring the knowledge framework compartments, and they see awareness raising in society as one of the issues that can be an opportunity to progress. They think that standards for data storage is also an opportunity, and transdisciplinary research is an opportunity, and tailor-made management strategies as well. Then I would like to go to the 5 stock takes that we did. So the first stock take was about sustainable soil management practices. This was done a little bit different. So this was not done with the National Hub, but this was done as an inventory by one of our partners, and asked this questionnaire to all of the partners that are connected to EJP soil. So the top 5 reported practices that they found were organic fertilizers, cover and catch crop, crop rotation, reduced tillage, and efficient fertilization. Then they also ranked these for the different regions, and they found, of course, that there are some differences among regions. So in the southern region, you find more water management related management practices. And in the western part of Europe, you find predominantly crops and cropping systems as management options. The second stock take was on soil quality indicators and associated decision support tools, including ITC tools. And they found that about a third of the countries do not have sufficient information about soil carbon stocks. And more than half of the countries do not have good qualitative characteristics of soil organic matter. And soil water content, while this was ranked very important as a topic, is little monitored at all. Then some of the soil quality indicators are used in national and legislations and policies. So the fact that they do not have actually good, proper information for that is a problem. Also, in some policies, ecosystem services are put forward as an but there are actually no indicators used in any of the countries. Then the next one was to make an assessment of the achievable soil carbon sequestration on country level. This diagram is a little bit complex, but I'll try to explain it very briefly. So the percentage that you see in the y-axis is the national reduction potential relative to the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. So in some in some countries it's very high or quite high, so up to 27%, and in some it's extremely low. And also there is a lot of variability in the type of measures that the countries put forward as the way they are going to achieve more soil carbon sequestration. So this was done in 14 countries across Europe. And another thing that what is interesting from this report is that they show a very, they show that socioeconomic factors are rarely taken into account, and only technical information is used when they are thinking of these different, very heterogeneous types of potentials of soil carbon sequestration measures. However, socioeconomic factors should be taken into account because they are highly relevant in the actual implementation of these measures. Then the next one was an inventory of the use of models for accounting and policy support, specifically looking at soil quality and at soil carbon. This inventory showed that there is a very high variability in the different models that are used independently from this on different scales and for different purposes. The soil organic carbon models that are used nationally are quite different, but about half of the countries only are using these models. The other countries are also planning to implement models. However, this is not, so is a need for harmonization. Then when it comes to soil organic carbon models on field scale, there is a very big range in different models used. So there is a potential to enhance the quality of model application for national greenhouse gas reporting at smaller scales to support farm management. The last stocktake was had the objective to complete the stocktake of current methodologies for fertilization guidelines and whether there was a scope to harmonize these across member states. So what they found was that there were substantial differences in context, format, and delivery of the current fertilization guidelines across Europe. Also, the soil analysis tests are very different across countries. And some countries, they update their guidelines annually, while others do this only up to 10 years. Harmonization of guidelines is seen as very welcome, but the harmonization of soil testing data and agronomic requirements is seen too difficult. Then the next step is to come to our roadmap. I need to speed up a bit. As Claire already showed in the beginning, there are these 6 different EJP expected impacts and the long-term impact of farmers becoming the stewards of land and soil resources. What I would like to highlight here, only not to repeat what was already said, is that in expected impact 1, so the understanding of soil management for multifunctional agricultural use, for climate change mitigation, adaptation, sustainable production, and sustainable environment, was a too broad a scope for us to put into as one goal. So in the roadmap, we have divided these different topics into 4 chapters. Then also we looked at impact 5 because it has the fostering of uptake of soil management practices, both by end users and in terms of the science policy interface. So also here we have made a division of the 2 topics. Then what we did in the roadmap is that the main purpose, as I tried to explain in the beginning, was to come to a set of activities that we are going to do in the time frame of EJP soil. So which kind of activities are we going to do in the work packages, and which kind of activities are we going to do within the research projects, in the internal and the external research projects. So here you can see some examples of active outputs from activities that we are doing or are going to do. Just as an example, I have taken one expected impact 1D, the sustainable environmental management, as an example. So what we did in each chapter is we made an introduction on why this impact is actually needed, with a short state of the art on these important topics. Then we took the knowledge gap as they were identified in the literature review and the different tasks that I just and the stock takes that I just presented to you. Then identify the outputs that are needed to reach the impact that is desired, and derive from that the activities to obtain the results needed to come to these outputs. And from that, we had the tasks in the work packages and the research topics for the research project that will be developed into calls in work package 3 and 4. So for each of these chapters, we then created a list of topics that are needed to be addressed in the work packages, and in the research calls. And these codings, in this case, is SE, which it means sustainable environment. You can see back in the calls when you will have a look at that. And these topics were developed into scopes, which you can see as the scopes of the research calls. Then to just approach it from the other side, to make it more clear how we have tried to develop the activities that we are going to do. You see here on the right-hand side, you see just as an example, I took expected impact 2 because it's easier to explain it with. So the expected impact to foster soil carbon sequestration that contributes to climate change mitigation. To be able to reach this expected impact, we need these different outcomes. We need these different outcomes. And these different outcomes, they need outputs from our activities. And then, so we have, here you can see the set of activities that we are currently already doing. So the little green circles are projects that are already running. And the other items are projects that we are, which are partly already being set out in the current call or are planned for in the next calls to come. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Yes.
And as we do not have time for questions now, please put your questions into the chat and I will reply there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Saskia Visser. That was a concise survey of all the work done in the work packages. Nice results. There is one question, Saskia, that I want to ask now. Somebody in the chat asks, are the reports of the EGP soil and stock takes, the data about the carbon sequestration, accessible within the consortium or even outside the EGP soil community? And if so, where and when?
Okay, well, within the consortium, we can make available all the reports that have been made in draft version. So we do have like big letters of draft all over them. However, the final products, they still need to be evaluated by the Commission.
Okay.
And once they are being approved, then they will be available for everyone.
Public.
And yeah, then will become public.
Well, probably we will put it on the website of EGP Soil program then. Okay, yes. Thank you very much again, Saskia Visser.